Well, Russia's foreign minister says he guarantees Moscow did not tamper with the alleged chemical gas attack site in Douma. Speaking to the BBC, Sergey Lavrov maintains the attack was staged.
The event did not take place. What did take place was the staged thing. It did not involve any chemical weapons.
And you believe the American representative of the OPCW, the Organization for Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, says there is a deep concern that Russia has tampered with the evidence sites in Douma. Can you guarantee Russia has not tampered with them?
Well, yes, I can guarantee.
Let's get you more now on the concerns over Syria and the U.S.-led airstrikes. I'm joined live from Houston in Texas by a former U.S. Congressman, Dr. Ron Paul. Dr. Paul, thank you for joining us on Africa Live. First off, the U.S. and its allies have been criticized for conducting those strikes before the independent investigation on the alleged chemical attack. What's your take on the timing of the strikes?
Well, it looks like they were in a rush because they didn't want to find out the truth. That is, our side, the Americans, didn't want to know the truth because they wouldn't have the excuse to do this. So they were bound and determined to do it. And now that a few people are getting in there to investigate, we find out that some of us who were very suspicious of it, that there wasn't a gas attack. That is what it's turning out to be. So I think those of us who were very concerned, reluctant, and urged that it not be done and that the bombing stop, I think we were absolutely correct on that. And now it turns out, as you have already reported, that this suffocation and this killing of young kids is a consequence of war, but it's not the consequence of Assad, gassing his own people. That's the outlandish lies that we hear incessantly, on our TV, and we certainly heard it leading up to this bombing. So I would say that those of us who are seeking the truth, I think it's coming out, but unfortunately it comes out slowly, and yet I think it's crucial that we do get that. I think the American people are more in tune with what I'm saying than you realize, because we don't have control of the mainstream media, but we're on the internet, and we get a lot of support for our position of independence, and that we just need to change our policies over there, because our organization, the Institute for Peace and Prosperity, has argued from the very beginning we shouldn't even be there. We should just get out of Syria. That's not in our territory, it's not in our interest, and yet we're not yet winning that argument.
So in your view, Dr. Paul, though there is little proof that there were any chemical weapons, but what proof, though, do you think, if any, does the United States and its allies have that the Syrian regime may have used the chemical weapons?
Well, I don't think the chemical weapons were there, and I don't think our government believed they were there, because if they were in those buildings that we bombed, wouldn't that endanger a lot more people? But then they went and bombed these buildings, and there was no explosions, no gas discovered there. So it was all fake news. It was all determined and set up so that we could perpetuate this. Even though I think there's a mixture in attitudes in our administration, because in one sense, I think our president sort of would like to, fade away from that. But the neoconservatives are so powerful and influential, they want more and more and more. So they put the pressure. And I think what happened here was they tried to satisfy both sides, which I think always ends badly, trying to satisfy the side that said we ought to come home versus the side that says we ought to expand the war and send in 500,000 people, like we've had a habit of doing over the past, several decades. So I think that is what has happened on the foreign policy, and why we ended up with this bombing that really was guided. And I think there was enough warnings there for the people there that nobody got killed, which was fine and dandy. But I think that means that we ought to just take the position that we advocate, and that is mind our own business and stay out of that and let somebody else solve some of those problems over there. Since 2014, since Obama went in and said we have to get rid of Assad, things have gotten much worse, and we believe as libertarians that we shouldn't be there.
So Russia, on its part, though, says there's a campaign of lies against Moscow and its allies at the UN Security Council. So what's your take on that?
Well, I'm sorry that I didn't get all those words. If you would mind rephrasing that again for me, please.
Well, I'm talking about Russia's part, though, and Russia says there's a campaign of lies against Moscow and its allies at the UN Security Council. What's your take on that? What's your view?
Okay. Well, I think that Russia has more justification, of course, for being in Syria. They're an ally and they have a base there. That's one thing. They have more, and what they're doing at the United Nations, of course, they're trying to protect their interests. But my argument is, as Americans, we ought not to be involved in that. And Russia does have this the right to do this. They haven't, you know, they haven't started this war. And I think that we need more accurate information so that the American people don't get obsessed with that. And this got all mixed up with this this campaign of collusion with Russia and those kind of things. That was gross distortion, and it's still a lot going on. And then they mix it up with Syria, and it's a very serious thing because it could get out of hand. That's what we fear, is it could get out of hand and a lot more people involved and a lot more people getting killed. And that is why we take a very strong position of non-interventionism. You know, we want to be friends and we want to trade with people. We want to get along with the Russians and the Chinese and everybody else. I am for as much trade as possible, because we do know that history shows that the more you trade and interact with people, the less likely you are to fight with people, and that would be our goal.
Right. Dr. Paul, you did mention earlier that perhaps President Trump may want this situation to fade away. And given the concerns about the launching of these strikes, how much of a political risk was that decision for U.S. President Donald Trump?
Well, I think he took a risk either way. He was looking at, if he does nothing, then he's going to be bombarded by the, you know, the authoritarians, the neoconservatives who want to do much more. So he was pacifying them. At the same time, he had to put aside, I believe, and this is just a personal opinion, his instincts are more that I think he would like to get the troops out when he says that. I think he would like to be, you know, on better relations with Russia, but he gets beaten up so badly. So in some ways, I wished he would be stronger in the sense that if his instincts are for peace and talking to Russia and doing these things, he ought to stand up to it and not get pushed around by the neoconservatives. But he took this middle of the road, and the middle of the road is a good place to get hit by both sides of traffic. So I think that is the problem. I would much rather have seen him take a stronger stand for his instincts, which means that he wouldn't be bombing needlessly, and he would try to reverse some of the things that Obama did and bring the troops home, because Trump has in the past has said highly critical of our ridiculous position in Iraq. He says that was foolish, a terrible war that was in. So I think those are the instincts, but unfortunately the political pressure is very great, but I don't think this has solved his political problems. I think he still has to deal with issues. I think people respect you if you state your position and stand by it and be firm on your beliefs. I think that's the best way to go.
Right. Former U.S. Congressman Dr. Ron Paul joining us there from Houston. Thank you.